Twitter took a lot of heat last week about their handling of passwords, but I think they actually did a good job.
Hey Jim, Matt was telling us about like these exposed passwords, but you have another story about passwords and Twitter and GitHub.
Yeah, the last week, tail end of the week, there was a lot of press about Twitter was recommending that everybody change their password because they had been recording passwords in the clear in log files. I think Twitter actually responded responsibly. They discovered that they had this issue, they fixed it, and they promptly said, we don't believe any passwords were exposed except maybe to a handful of employees, but go ahead and change your password, as a precaution.
Twitter wasn't saying that they had actually had a breach. They were just saying that they had looked at their own code and realized that they had a flaw and they should never have been logging the passwords in the first place. And for good measure, people should be changing their passwords.
This came just less than a week, I think, after GitHub had discovered that they had some plain text passwords that were being logged in log files as well when people were changing their passwords. On GitHub, it was when you were doing a password change that it was recording it. I'm not exactly sure, but it sounds like on Twitter they were recording them a little more often. Yeah, and people were giving them a hard time, they should never have passwords in the clear. Well, that's not the way that authentication actually works.
Even the way that they had implemented their password checking wasn't necessarily at fault. It was simply the act of logging it to disk, which should not have occurred.
People were giving them a hard time about it, but in fact, that's the way that probably 95 or 99% of the authentication actually works, is you encrypt the tunnel, you send the password across in the clear, you do the hashing on the other end, and do the comparison there. So the password does end up in the clear over there, but ideally it would never be stored any place, never written to disk any place, just in memory long enough to do the comparison, and then you throw it away.
I agree with Jim that I think they did the right thing for all of their users. They discovered a problem, they fixed it, and they let people know what they should do to protect themselves.
I think they did the right thing. When they realized it, they fixed it. It's an internal log file that only employees had access to, so there's no reason to believe that there are criminals that have access to all of this.
But out of an abundance of caution.
And out of abundance of caution, they said, go ahead and change it. The other thing you could do is set up two-factor authentication. Nearly everybody's got some form of multi-factor authentication available now. So I think Twitter got some unfair criticism on this. I think they handled it properly.
I think a lot of places that aren't used to reporting security news treated it the same way they would treat an actual breach.
Right, as if the bad guys, as if criminals had gotten a hold of it.
Right, which is not what happened.
Right.
As far as we know.
As far as we know.
But that's the thing, there's no evidence of any sort of real breach. This is just them saying, we have made a mistake, we are sorry for it, here's what you can do, and here's what we've done. And that's that sort of transparency that really should get them more respect than it should anything else.
They should be applauded for being transparent about it. I agree.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. I think it's important when companies make these kinds of discoveries, they were very upfront and they told everybody the best thing that they could do for themselves, which is to reset their own passwords.
If a company like Twitter or GitHub says it's time to change your password, go ahead and change your password. They ought to be changed periodically anyway.
You should be having different kinds of passwords on all the different websites that you have. So don't reuse your Twitter password, let's say, for GitHub or for something else like your personal email. You should try to have a different password for each site. A lot of people nowadays like to use like a password manager just to make sure you're generating a random password for each site.